Welcome to the Train Anything Show. This is John.
And I'm Dylan.
And we are here to inspire belief and action one podcast at a time. We believe anything can be trained, and we're here to talk about it. Today, with special guest, Angelo Gingerelli. Angelo is a strength coach and author of a new book called The Next 4 Years, Compete, Win, and Thrive in College Sports. He has over 2 decades of experience coaching athletes of all levels, especially at NC State, Virginia Tech, and Seton Hall. We're stoked to have him on the pod and learn more from him about what it takes to succeed in college sports and beyond that. But before we do,
let us give you a proper TA welcome. Through the doors of Seton Hall rode a man both sharp and steady. With a clipboard and a kettlebell, you knew that he was ready. He wrote a book on how to train, and athletes all stood tall, working in the weight room at good old Seton Hall. Good old Seton Hall. He had coached the fastest runners, built their legs like timbered steel, made the soccer team explosive and the swimmers hard to kill. With 4 years to make it happen, a big goal to chase. If you're training with Gingerelli, you're training with the best. Training with the best.
hey!
Welcome aboard, Angelo.
Hey, Dylan and John, thank you guys so much. This is the 49th podcast I've done since the book came out last year. My goal was 50, and that I had a lot of good intros in 49 podcasts. That might be the best one. That you guys set the bar high for anybody else. And thank you so much for doing that.
Hey, pressure to number 50, yeah?
I did not expect that at all, man. That was really exciting, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, so do you know who Marty Robbins is, the music artist? He sings Big Iron. Got a big iron on my head.
I do not. Is he a similar genre to what you guys just did?
Yeah, that was his. We riffed on his big iron. We thought it was good for lifting iron.
I'm going to go check that out next. But I already know I like your version better because it's about me. There's no question about that. Sometimes the cover version's better. I think you guys just won that battle, so that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, you got a song written about you now, man.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
All right. So we kick the show off every week with Train Anything. So being our business, Train Anything, we believe that anything can be trained. So each week we just like to have some fun. This can be workout related, life, family, anything. It doesn't matter. It can be in anything. So whatever you're working on in the week. So John.
Yeah.
What are you working on?
I am working on headspace around running on treadmill. So I am starting a marathon training plan this week, and it's going to involve a lot of treadmill running. And so I've got a membership at a gym by my house, and so I'm in the process of like feeling out the treadmills, finding the one that I know I'm just going to spend a lot of time on this winter, and like trying to create that headspace of like when I go there, I'm there to do work and just dialed in to do it and not be bored or like just get in the headspace. So I'm starting to practice that, like find that spot and make it my home. Nice.
Treadmill running.
Yes.
Do you run on a treadmill, Angelo?
I try not to. I will do anything to avoid it. If we had a snowstorm or a hurricane or something like that, I will. But I will get outside under almost any other circumstances. So it's a necessary evil during certain times of the year. I'm on the coast of New Jersey, so we get a couple months of pretty bad weather. Right. But I try to avoid it as much as possible. I really like the outdoors. I like fresh air, and I like just mileage. So it's not necessarily for me, but if you can train for a marathon totally on a treadmill, hats off, because that is something I don't think I have in me.
Dude, you kind of have to out here, unless you're pretty hardy. You can dress up, brave the elements, but
I'll get outside.
There's better quality inside on a treadmill, I'd say.
Yeah, pace work, that kind of thing.
All right, Angelo, you got to be thinking about your Train Anything. I'll go next, and then we'll have you go. Okay. So I've been working on CO2 tolerance. So if you guys don't know what that is, earlier this year, I started working with a breath coach named Zach Kramer. And, so doing a lot of triangle breathing, box breathing, breath holds, deep breaths, that kind of stuff. So when I was doing that this spring, I ran 2 PRs this year, earlier in the spring. So, and then it kind of went by the wayside with just kids, and it just didn't feel like it was adding to my life. It was kind of taken away. So I'm back on the grind of daily breath work.
Yeah.
So doing cycles of like 10 rounds of 6 inhale, 6 out, exhale, 6 hold, or, building up to, I think I finished at 12 seconds intervals, where I could be pretty comfortable. So yeah, building my CO2 tolerance, which then translates to, red blood cell, development. Yeah. So that's what I've been working on. Yeah. How about you?
All right, so you guys are a little more locked into your training right now than I am. I changed jobs last month. So I left CNO after 20 years. I took a job as a professor at another university called Kane University, New Jersey. So now my workouts are kind of whatever I could get in. So this week I got 2 workouts in a private gym facility, which is a little different. I'm used to working out in like a college training and conditioning environment. And then this morning I dropped my daughter off at school and got a nice little 7-mile run in right along the coast, which is kind of a cool thing. I didn't really get to do that when I was in the weight room 12, 13 hours a day. And now I get to kind of start the day off, be dad, make sure she's good at school, and then go get it. I usually run when it's dark out. So now the sun's up and I'm running like a regular person, which I really like. So I got a big 7-mile little loop in this morning, and then we'll see what the weekend brings after that.
That's awesome. So yeah, you're training, just getting it in.
You're living that lifestyle. We talk about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to do general conditioning and kind of stay in decent shape, and I'll get through this first semester at the new job, and then when January hits, I'll try to have a goal of maybe a marathon or a longer race next year or something like that. Just kind of map out the year in January. I think as much, obviously, we love training. That's why we're on this conversation. But I think every once in a while, just like that adult life hits you, and you got to maybe put that training, get your work in, stay active, and just kind of repriorities for a month or 2, and then hit it hard when you get the chance to. So I like what I'm doing right now. It's fun. I'm staying in decent shape, and then hopefully in a couple of months I can lock in and have a goal and go ahead and achieve that.
That's awesome. Have you ran a marathon before?
Yeah, I've run 3 actually. I've run the same marathon 3 times. It's called New Jersey Marathon. It runs in front of my house. So I live on the course. I walk to and from the start finish line. It's like a home game for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, teams do better when they play at home. I do better when I do that race because I know that's my training course, which is usually pretty good. So it's a kind of unique advantage I have doing that a couple times over the years.
Yeah, do you get to throw out your old aid station, or is that frowned upon?
No, it's cool. My wife and daughter come out, throw me a Gatorade, give me a high five, and I run by our front yard. I'm trying to lock in. I gotta finish this race by noon. I gotta cut that grass later today.
Nice.
Never quit.
That's awesome. Love those handy races. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into this pod meet. We're gonna dig into your book and learn more about you, and John
thing or 3.
Yeah, John can kick us off there.
Yeah, well, we'll hit you up with a softball. The first one. So, why this book? Why now? What was you gotta be a certain way, feel a certain way, get hit with a certain thing to want to write a book to begin with, let alone write an email, write a post. But so kind of what was it a building thing? Was there an impetus? Why?
Guys, here's what happened. Back in 2019, I signed with a pretty big publisher called Bloomsbury to write a book called Finish Strong, Resistance Training for Endurance Athletes. And the idea was I was running marathons. My co-author, Dr. R.J. Borges, was a triathlete. And we were working out, training, lifting together. We were close to 40 and still kind of getting faster, still staying not injured. And we kind of wrote what we think is the book on resistance training for endurance athletes, right? Because I was training with people and going on runs with people that would literally run 18 miles in pounding rain and gale force winds, but they were terrified of a squat rack or a lat pull down machine, right? So I wanted to try to bridge those worlds a little bit. We did that, put it out, had a good run with that, and then our publishers over in Europe, and I had my second idea for this book we're going to talk about today a little more, and they just didn't see the vision. They just college athletics is an American phenomenon. It doesn't happen in other parts of the world. So then I went in and I self-published the second book with this one idea in mind. College athletics has changed so much since 2020, in the last 5 years. And the book's about half of that. How do you pick a school? What questions to ask on a recruiting trip? How do you make sure your major meshes with your athletic career? All the things that people just don't know. Right? And the second half of the book is a training program from the spring of your senior year to your first day on campus. Because you guys went into my bio a little bit. I have a decent resume. I've been to some cool places. But the one thing that's consistent of everybody I've ever worked with, from McDonald's All-American to walk-on cross-country kids, they just come to college unprepared. They just don't know what they're getting into. I just want to get to that. And I think if you don't tell people what to expect, how mad can you be if they're not prepared? So I want to give, players and parents the resources necessary to prepare and have a better transition when they get there, right? So I wrote that at the very end of 2023, put it out 2024, and now we're coming up on year 2 since it came out. And I got a lot of good feedback. The example I keep giving to people is, think about the first time you bought a car, right? You don't know anything about how to finance it, what tires you want, what model you need. It's really hard, right? Second car, it's a little bit easier. Right, I know somebody at the dealership. I have this much to put down, whatever it might be. By the 5th car, it's easy, right? Because you've done it 4 previous times. Nobody goes to college 5 times, right? So everybody's a first or second time consumer, and nobody knows how to get the information necessary to make this a good purchase and a good life experience. So I want to just be part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Yeah, I know. Just speaking to that, I swam in college D3, and there was zero lead in. I think, I met the coach and I just showed up, and then was at practice probably getting smoked, like just getting beat up, because I didn't look for the resource back then.
And the culture isn't built yet either. So right, you're coming in as a football player or swimmer or whatever. Like, is the culture there? I guess it's from the seniors. So you kind of
when you're new? Yeah,
when you're new. I don't know. So, and I guess ultimately, are you, with your book, are you trying to teach discipline, or are you trying to get kids to think about life after college? Or are you just what's that about?
Well, a big part of the book is in the era we live in now, with a lot of NIL money at stake and the transfer portal being a thing where you can leave, you go to 4 colleges in 4 years and nobody bats an eye, right? But part of the thing I say when I speak about it, or when I wrote into the book, was that at some point you have to think long term, right? Now, if you're an All-American basketball player and going to make 7 figures and have life-changing money from going to school X versus school Y, you should absolutely go to school X and figure out the rest of your life once you cash the check, right? But if you're a swimmer, a cross-country runner, baseball, softball player, soccer, whatever it might be, and the NIL is, pocket money basically, what's your major? What are you going to do when you graduate? Because nobody's playing softball, swimming as a career after they're done, right? So I think a lot of times just to convince parents and kids to think long term, think about what majors are offered at the schools you're looking at. And the other the thing I keep telling people is, see the logistics of pursuing that major in the school you decide to go to. So, for example, at CNO, we have our main campus, and then we have a satellite campus for all our medical majors, right? All our nursing, physical therapy, athletic training, all that stuff. Well, because of the distance and because of North Jersey traffic being absolutely insane, you can't be a student athlete and pursue a medical major, right? So you want to know that before you go, because if you signed up to, say, play basketball at CNO and you thought you were going to be a physical therapist, you're not. And now it might be too late to figure that out when you're already, in the system. So start thinking about those things long term. I always say too, and look at what your summers are going to look like too, because we as student athletes, your school year is jam packed with activity, right? It's maybe early morning training, class in the middle, afternoon training, mandatory team meals, study, all that stuff, right? But if you got the summer off, can you intern? Can you get your foot in the door in the industry you want to work in? If in baseball, if every single guy has to play summer ball, that means you're not doing a finance internship. You're not doing an architecture internship. You're not in a lab doing research if you think that's your future. Now, if you really believe you're going to Major League Baseball, you should go and try to play in the best summer league you can, right? But if you're playing college baseball to go and be a financial analyst, you should be in New York City in the summer learning that world, right? I think that there's not a lot of hard and fast rules. It's just things I think people need to think about and realize what your situation is and how you can maximize your time in college. The 4 years are going to go by. Hopefully you're going to get a degree, but not all degrees are equal. Not all experiences are equal. And think about something bigger than just what's immediately right in front of you. Because at 22, this is going to wrap up. Where do you want to be at 35 or 40?
Yeah, yeah. And so how do you, when you go through that and moving into the mindset, like what are some of the prioritization tactics that you'd suggest as somebody's going through that exercise, maybe before some of the tactical stuff? Or
Perfect. I think one of the things you got to look at right away, and what most college freshmen need to master if they're going to be successful, is time management and scheduling, right? Get your syllabuses together early, look at your travel practice schedule early, and try to fit that puzzle together as early as you can, right? So just for example, if you have a calculus exam on a Monday and the whole weekend before you're on the road to play in a tournament or something, well, are you doing the work on the calculus studying before the weekend? Are you taking the work with you on the road? If you don't do either of those things, you're probably going to fail that test, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest thing is realizing the workload is going to be higher, both athletically and academically, and planning around that as soon as you can, right? The cliche everybody says, but it's true. You fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I don't know if that's evident anywhere more than in college, where your athletic success is based on the habits you do day to day and build into a championship, whatever it might be. And your grades are a direct reflection of how you prepare, what you do, and the time you put into it. So I think it's a great opportunity to learn that if you haven't done it yet, but it's also a great opportunity to fail miserably if you don't do it early on and get out ahead of things, right? The other thing I think is a good kind of mindset I always talk to kids about is the jump from high school to college, particularly to, I think, a Division I college. Even if you were the best player in your high school's history, everybody that you're going to play with in this locker room was that where they were, right? Mm-hmm. And you guys, I think it's a little bit easier with sports like swimming and track because it's very clear where you stand, right? The clock doesn't lie. If I run a 9-minute mile, right, you run an 8-minute mile, there's no argument who's better or worse, right? Mm-hmm. But when you look at the team sports where game plan and coaching, and there's a lot of variables, matchups matter a little more. A lot of disgruntled kids early on, I'm better than that person, why aren't I playing? Whereas I think people like us that have leaned into the track swimming side of things, there's really, I mean, if you argue the stopwatch, you're delusional, right? Whereas in other sports, there's a lot more gray area of where you should be playing and where you stand kind of thing. And then which leads to the book came out right as the transfer portal became a thing, which is you can just kind of throw yourself on the open market after every year and decide where you're going to land. And I hate to use I think a third cliche right in the first 7 minutes of the interview, but sometimes the grass is greener sometimes the grass is greener on the other side. Sometimes it's greener where you water it, and you got to kind of decide what you want to do. And I think leaving might be the right answer, but watering the grass and making yourself better might be the answer. So you got to figure out what pertains to you.
Yeah. Have you seen that personally? Like kids will come onto the sport, they want to be a PT, and then they're like, "Oh, I can't do sport anymore," and they leave the sport or have to change.
Yeah. Well, I've seen both. I've seen student athletes in multiple sports retire from the sport to go into a medical type profession, right, and then focus on that. And then I've seen student athletes just transfer to other colleges where they can do both. So I've seen both sides of that, right? And that's a question you really got to ask on that recruiting trip, right? Like even for take someone like an education major, if you want to be an education major, you have to do student teaching. So that means for an entire school day, you're not on campus. Is your coach okay with you missing 5 practices a week if that falls in the school day you have to be a student teacher at? So I mean, there's I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but you need the information to make a good decision, right?
Right. Yeah. And there's, right, to your point, the levels at which you're going to, like the levels of commitment that may come with the different, right, D1, D2, D3, or just the program that you're heading into makes a big difference.
Yeah, 100%. And what we're seeing in New Jersey, which I'm not how things work out when you guys are in Montana, but our Division III college conference in New Jersey called the NJAC, New Jersey Athletic Conference. It's really good. It's really competitive. And we're seeing kids transfer from Division I schools to that because exactly what you said, the time commitment isn't as much. There's a bigger emphasis on academics, and they can do your internships, your student teaching, all these different majors that you probably can't do at a place like Seton Hall, Rutgers, Monmouth, the D1 schools. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I should, I don't really work in athletics anymore, like I said earlier, but that's a good decision, right? If you're going to step away from playing a sport that takes up all your time, effort, and energy to go pursue what you're going to do for the rest of your life, can you fault the student for doing that? I don't think you can.
Yeah, totally. I remember, and I think similar to what you're talking about back in like when I was swimming, like the D3 nationals was faster than the D2 nationals. It wasn't as fast as the D1 nationals, but like just given, some really talented athletes said, I'm going to go somewhere where I can focus more on the academics. Yeah, I'm still going to be rock up to a swim meet.
And I think the other best thing about the sports that we play where we're beating the clock more than our opponents is you can be great anywhere, right? You can swim and run really fast anywhere. Whereas team sports, it's a little bit harder, right? It's hard to be an elite basketball player in a conference where there's no other elite basketball players. But the sports, people like us have engaged in for most of our lives, you definitely can.
Yeah. So do you think, ultimately career goal drives that decision for like a super talented athlete, right? Like if you want to go pro in something and you think college athletics is the way to it, okay, right? Commit. But otherwise,
think long term. You're very basic. Just think long term and make the right decision for you and your family that's going to put you in a place to make a living and have a great adult life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That. Don't chase the shiny objects sometimes. I don't know. Which is hard to do when you're 17 years old.
Yeah.
And like trying to make this decision. Super hard.
Do you think this book applies to any age? Like, so maybe somebody's not in college, but they're, I don't know, trying to figure out how to become a better athlete and the
training aspect of it would be a good 3 or 4 months of training for just about anyone, right? Particularly novices that haven't trained a whole lot, because I looked at it as the majority of your really talented juniors, seniors in high school are so busy with travel ball and showcases and playing on 3 different teams all year round. Most of them, their training age is very young, right? So the idea is I wrote it from the perspective of these are men and women that haven't been in the weight room a ton. So really anyone that's even a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, but hasn't been in the gym a ton can probably apply this to their life and their training. And it would be a good like weight training 101 workout, right? Maybe do it for the 3-4 months that's written out and then decide I'm going to do CrossFit next. I'm going to do another kind of training next. But I think it's a pretty good introduction to it. And I feel the same way about the first book, Resistance Training for Endurance Athletes. Even if you're not a marathoner or a triathlete, something like that, those workouts are probably applicable for just about everybody to get started. And then maybe you decide I like X and I go and pursue X after that. Yeah,
I love that because and the on-ramp, as you talk about it, the on-ramp to strength training can be applied across levels. I know we have a lot of athletes who maybe have just done some of the aerobic conditioning. They're a runner, they're a swimmer, but getting in the gym is not something that's part of their regular thing. So how do you do that safely? How do you do that effectively? And so being able to take something like this, even though it's not just for the 17, 18-year-old out there, but applied elsewhere, this is great. Love that. But jumping off of that,
real quick, when you guys say train anything, what are the majority of the clients you deal with day to day? What's the demographic?
Most of it is endurance, age group endurance athletes. So doing swim, bike, run, marathons, trail stuff, cycling, but mostly of the endurance bend.
Yeah. And is that real popular where you guys are in Montana?
Yeah, Bozeman's growing quite a bit, pretty rapidly.
Yep.
Yeah, lots of endurance, mountain junkies, and people who are just out all the time.
Yeah.
Nice.
One thing
that got super popular in New Jersey, though, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, you're good. I was just going to say in Bozeman, there's a lot of people who want to do an Ironman in September, but they also want to do, that marathon and earlier in the spring and then that trail race, that popular trail. So there's like a lot of, people just want to train anything and everything.
And get outside.
I like that. That's a good environment. One thing that's really grown the last couple of years are adult run groups. right?
Yeah.
Like almost every running shoe store, every like community has a group, like literally like 30, 40 adults meeting up, and it, varying levels of competitiveness and pacing. But it's really one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time. Just adults meeting up, usually early in the morning, and getting some miles in, and talking and making friends and being active. So, and then you see people like branch off, like this group will go to coffee together, this group is going to work. It's really one of the cooler things I've seen. Because I think one thing that, as much as I love running marathons, it's a pretty solitary existence, right? But then you got to throw that team group camaraderie in there. It just gets really fun. You meet new people, and I made a ton of friends in run groups the last couple of years. So it's definitely really a fun thing going on out here.
Yeah. Same. Sure. Yeah. Love the community is so important on all of it for sure. But jumping through, so you were just talking about training philosophy. We talked about it being some of the strength training that's written out in the book, good on-ramp for folks who are wanting to move into strength, or more specifically to the demographic the book's geared towards, those high school going into college kids. But you list out a number of great debates as part of your book. So we wanted to give you the debate stage. I mean, there's one-sided. We're here, but we'll see if we pick at you. But we're going to hit them, and then you can convince us, be as convincing as you want to be on why you're right, which is, you're our guest. So we'll start with you. So the first one, strength versus conditioning. Your take is conditioning wins for incoming freshmen. I'll leave it there. Strength versus conditioning. Go.
My argument is this: everybody should do both, right? They're both important.
Yeah.
But if you got to pick one, that summer before your freshman year in college, if you show up in the weight room and you're not as strong as the upperclassmen and you need some extra instruction, you need a spotter, that's why the strength and conditioning staff exists. That's why I had a job for decades, right? If you show up to the first day of conditioning or practice and you are the last person to finish every drill, you're doubled over the garbage can and vomiting midway through, and you're laid up with a hamstring injury on the trainer's table after the first day because you showed up out of shape, you immediately put a bullseye on your back that you're a liability to that program, right? So I think with the way I was looked at it was, I can almost understand people coming to campus not knowing how to lift weights and not being that strong. You didn't have access to a gym, you didn't know what you were doing, you chose not to call me over the summer, but tell me why you didn't run. Tell me why you didn't go and just hit the pavement and come in good cardiovascular shape. And it's really, in my opinion, not a good answer to that. So I think if you got to pick one or the other, show up in shape, and then if you can get strong, get strong after that. You guys agree with that or not?
Yeah, I would.
Same. I don't want to be the guy heaving over the garbage can. And I think that applies across, you could say, well, if you're a lineman on a football team, you got to be explosive for 8 seconds. How conditioned do I need to be? It's like, yeah, well, again and again and again, there's a baseline level of conditioning that every single, the shot putter can benefit from.
I think real quick, one of the mistakes in this argument everybody makes is we hear conditioning and think we're going to run miles and miles and miles, right? For the lineman, his conditioning might be the ability to be explosive off the line 30 times in a row, right? For your softball pitcher, it's the ability to throw the ball at a high velocity for 70 pitches in a game or whatever it is, right? But the joke, we live in this era now where everybody that doesn't like running wants to tell you why they don't have to run. Like a kid's in my face, be like, I'm a baseball player, I don't need to run. I'm like, yeah, but you got winded from the dugout to first base. You don't have a baseball problem, you have a life problem. Like, where is this going to go as you get older? So I think to some extent, we got to, like you said, everybody can benefit from a little bit of cardio, and then realize, too, you're going to be a baseball player until you're 40 if everything goes perfectly. You're going to hopefully live another 50, 60 years after that. Maybe you don't get out of breath on your way to the mailbox when you're 40.
Let's start that habit now.
It just seems like a natural progression anyways. Like if you think about us, right, humans, when you're a kid, you just run around the block. You aren't focused on lifting anything heavy yet. It's like you're just building up that cardio, that conditioning. And then when you get a little older, you start to put more muscle on. And it's just like the same thing, I think. And I think it's always good to like revisit, right? So when you get to a certain level, like as a kid, okay, like my conditioning's good, I can do a little more strength or whatever. But then you have to go back to conditioning and then more strength. It's just like you kind of keep building the cake as you go.
Exactly. And you can also make an argument too. It's you probably to some extent always want to be working out whatever your weakness is, right? If you're a natural runner, aerobic swimmer type person, and that comes easy to you, that's awesome. You should lean into that. But then if your weak spot is mobility or strength or core strength, those are things you probably look at to try to get stronger. If we're looking at long-term health, if we're looking at, elite athleticism, maybe you're better off just leaning into the strengths. But if we're looking at long-term health, I think you want to address the weaknesses too.
All right. Yep. All right. We're going to move on. Strength versus power. So you say build strength first.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we see really young athletes being told they have to be, throwing medicine balls and box jumps, and those are all great exercises. But I think we want to build that strength base first, right? Get good at the squat, the hinge, the push, the pull, just the weight room basics. Get pretty strong, and then move on to moving the body or to implement as fast as possible, as powerfully as possible, right? I think we need to just really hone in on basics, get some basic strength, and then get into some power development after that.
Do you think there's a risk of injury if you jump into power before strength? Is that kind of your philosophy there?
100%, right? So just look at something, I think in the book, the example I use is a box jump versus like a squat. And if you look at the same movement, as the jump is happening way faster, right? So if we can't do it slow, how can we do it fast and expect injury not to happen, right? So I think just working on things slow and controlled, building some muscle mass, some joint stability, and then speeding things up is the answer, right? I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't sprint before we jogged, right? We'd crawl, walk, jog, progress to it. I think the same thing in a strength versus power argument.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It's just like, we agree. It's just, yeah. Okay. Speed versus agility. You say agility is more useful.
Yeah, because I think, and then this is, I think you got to take track athletes out of this conversation for a second. But if you look at your team sports, how often do you really get to peak speed in almost any team sport, right? It almost never happens. So I think everything happens in kind of close and moving around. And if you're not agile, take football, for example, or soccer or basketball. If you're not agile enough to break away from the opponent or the pack, top speed doesn't ever come into the conversation, right? So I think for the most part, look at, making moves and getting around and being good at changing direction, and then look at top end speed. Because most people, if you're running back in football, if you make it the top end speed in a game, that goes on ESPN. Like, that happens so rarely in college and professional football. It's the highlight reel when it does happen. So you're probably better off getting better at the close range, change of direction stuff, and then looking at the top end stuff later on.
Yeah. And when you say, generalizing, but that as folks are developing and heading into college, what do you think they've spent more time developing at that point? Speed or agility, or like, where's the kind of?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I think it probably depends on like what high school you went to, what club teams you played on, what those coaches valued. Do you guys have a firm opinion on that? Because I'm not sure I know the answer.
No, I don't.
Well, I can speak from what I've seen, I guess, with swimming. So when I was on swim team, we just did yards and worked hard. That was it. It's pretty simple, very basic high school program. And then when I come out to Montana, the club swim team here had an ex-Olympic swim coach. So his theory was technique, timing, counting patterns, breath. It was like complete opposite of what I did. So I think it just depends on the program. Like, that's right, speed and agility for me, or speed or technique. And I think his program's better because I don't know. I think in high school, you need to, if you want to go into college, it's better to have that perfect technique and know your count pattern for the distance you're swimming, rather than being super fit and maybe burnt out going into college, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you guys agree as two colleagues, and I've worked with swimming for 20 years at Seton Hall, we had two swim coaches I run, both great guys I'm still in touch with, and I love working with swimmers. They work hard, they're always the first people in the building, there's the cool demographic of people. I've kept in touch with really hundreds of Seton Hall swimmers over the years. But would you guys agree that is a sport, because you guys said it, the burnout rate by the time you get to college is so high. There's almost no scenario than just looking at your conference championship as a light at the end of the tunnel and waiting to get done with it. Is that pretty accurate?
That's very accurate.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And if they didn't burn out in high school, they're burning out in college. It's like,
there's an expiration date. It's going to happen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a thing that and they're all great kids, man. Everybody, they great majors, they're interns, they go out, they great jobs, they keep in touch. But they're burning. And I think one thing I always do is being cognizant of that. I try to make the weight room for that group as fun as we can. Let's joke around. Let's talk about the music. Let's have a long stretch some days because I know what it's like. I know what that grind is like. Whereas I think a lot of strength coaches that have never done an endurance sport don't get that. They don't understand what it's like to come out of the pool after swimming 10,000 yards and then tell the kid to do 3 sets of squats, and the kid's like, "Dude, you got to be kidding me!" Which is the right response to that, right? So I think that's and I'll full disclosure to your guest. I love training swimmers. And I grew up literally less than a mile from the Atlantic Ocean. I am the worst swimmer you've ever had on this show. I promise you that. Every time I get in a pool and try to swim some laps, I'll jump in at like 3 o'clock. I'll swim until I'm tired and be like, yeah, it's probably like 4:15, 4:30. It's like 3:06. Like literally the clock just stops when I go in the water.
You were just surviving.
Okay, this is an interesting idea, the TrainAnything idea. So how specific our body adapts to stuff, right? Probably 6-7 years ago, I ran a marathon on a Sunday. Good time. I think I ran PR that race. Really good time. I'm in the peak cardiovascular shape I could possibly be in, right? I take 2 days off. Wednesday, I want to start the recovery process. I jump in the pool and start swimming, right? However many hundreds of miles I ran to get ready for that marathon didn't matter at all once I got in the water. I was exactly as exhausted as if I had not run a single mile in the previous 4 months. So, and then I got a little better at the summer, but not much. But it's really amazing how specific our cardiovascular system adapts to things. Again, I like swimming as an idea. I'm not great at it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's why the technique first when you're young is so important. Don't crush the yards yet. Because then you want kids to love it after high school, right? So like even if they aren't
any of these sports
in college, I know we're talking about swimming right now, but yeah, you want to be able to like, oh yeah, I want to go swim after school in college, or something like that.
And then the one thing too is I feel this way about cross country track kids and swimmers. There's some of the few activities you can do forever. Like if you don't get physically injured and mentally emotionally burnt out, you can swim as a workout literally until you're 80, 90 years old, right? You can run well into adulthood. I think they're things we should probably try to make fun for kids and look at it as more of a lifetime activity, more than just survive to the end of high school or the end of college. Because you can't play football at a rec level when you're 47 years old. There's no place to do that, right? But you can definitely swim, run, golf, tennis, those kind of sports, all throughout your lifespan.
Yeah. Before we go to the next one, because it's actually related, I did want to double back on what you talked about with running and then getting in the pool and the specificity around the training. I mean, when we're working with triathletes and they want to raise their ceilings, whether it's the VO2 max or power or critical speed, whatever it is, like, you can't train VO2 max on the bike and think that it's directly affecting your VO2 max on the run, or like you can't train it in the swim and then and have it like directly affect. Like you need to do the VO2 sessions across all disciplines for us to actually move it in that discipline, because your body is just so tuned in to what's happening in those specific sports.
Do you guys find when you're training your adult population that when the triathlete world, all of your being a good swimmer is the best foundation as opposed to being good at the other two first? Is that fair to say that if all things being equal, if the three of us start training for a triathlon and our VO2 max are similar, our running economy is similar, but you two are much better swimmers than me, you would probably be a better triathlete? Is that fair because you have years and years of good swimming under your belt and I don't? Or is that not? I've anecdotally observed that. I don't know what the research says. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's different a little bit. There is some, if you're a bad swimmer in triathlon, I'll talk for the professional field. You can still race really well. Like you just have to have an insane bike and run. So, right, if you're a bad swimmer, you got to compensate. You got to be the best biker and the best runner. And there's guys out there who are like that, and they are winning races.
Okay.
But I think, just go ahead and generally.
Yeah, I mean, what you just laid out in terms of if it's a similar ability, cardiovascular, right, VO2 max, if your genetics are similar, and one guy swam when he was 8 and the other guy didn't, the guy who swam when he was 8 is going to crush him. Yeah. Like, if you play that game. Because just the feel for the water is something if you learned it when you were a kid, like, I just advocate for everyone to put their kids in swim lessons. Because even just feeling that water, spending a year in summer swim, your brain makes those connections. And adult learned swimming is so hard, and guys have to work so hard to get that technique down. And I don't know, unless you're a natural swimmer, I'm trying to think of some adult learned, they're out there, but there's some who just won't ever get there.
And I think if you are an adult
at the professional level
swimmer, like something that adults don't have that kids have is they aren't as pliable anymore. So like kids can just adapt and learn how to float, and they're curious and they want to learn, and adults are just like, I just got to crush yards, and they just miss a lot of fundamentals of how do you float, how do you blow bubbles, how do you keep your face in the water and be calm. And so I don't know.
Triathlon. It's fun.
But I guess one last thing before we go on, like agility. So we just talked about speed and agility. You think agility is more useful. Would you say agility is a power movement, or is it more of like a technique?
I would say it's a little of both, right? I would say you gotta learn the technique of how you're gonna change direction, what foot to step with, that kind of stuff, right? And then I think once you do that at half speed, 3/4 speed, then it should become a power endeavor, right? And then the mistake I see a lot of coaches make, not to call anybody out by any means, we turn those change of direction and agility drills into conditioning, right? Instead of doing one rep, take a minute or two off, attack the next rep, we were telling kids to do 12 reps in a row, right? And the first one or two are really good, really, game type setting speed. And then rep 9, 10, 11, 12 are just a disaster of just going through motions. So I think to some extent, it should be a power movement once you get the technique down, right? And I think when we're coaching people, what they need is player specific, right? There's some players that move well and they just instinctively know how to make a cut or make a move or whatever it might be, and they just need to get stronger at it and be more aggressive at it. And there's certain players that are athletic but need to learn the steps and the biomechanics a little bit, right? So I think it's probably 50-50 from what I've seen. It's probably like just half and half in any given population. So, but it's, in my opinion, it's technique first and power, like we said earlier. But, with adequate recovery time to allow it to be a power development movement.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. So lots of rest. Like if you're going to do agility, recover so you can do it right. Don't be fatigued doing agility.
Yeah, which is just so much easier said than done. Because, and from my experience, sport coaches hate having kids sitting down, resting, getting a drink of water, whatever it might be. And then, so I got to tell you guys a quick story about this. I got super involved in Little League baseball and softball the last couple of years in my town, right? At first, I was just my daughter's softball coach. Then I was the softball coach and the director of operations. This past year, I'm coach, director of operations, and safety officer for the whole league. And that was a level of suburban dad I was not ready for. like I was cool not that long ago, and then he came at me like a Mack truck. But one thing, I enjoy it. I like what I'm doing with the Little League stuff. But that idea of like do a drill, recover fully, do it again, works really good with college kids that are really focused, right? When you got a group of screaming 8 and 9 year olds, sometimes you gotta be like, everybody's gotta move, everybody's gotta go. Right? Again. So again, I'm trying to do some good physiological training with these young men and women, but like it's real hard, dude. And this age group is different. The cliche, like attention spans have gotten shorter for a bunch of reasons. Last season, we had a good team. We lost more games to the ice cream truck than we did to our competition. Like, we'd be good, locked in, we're beating this pitcher, and the ice cream truck, we hear the alarm go off, and everybody's out of the dugout. I'm like, man, go. Win this game. We're getting a chocolate eclair right now.
Did the other team order it up? Was that part of their strategy? They're like, we're
locked in to playoff level softball, and next thing you know, everybody's got a Sonic the Hedgehog pop in their hands. I'm like, what just happened?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then you remember, oh, right, this is kids. Right, they're 10.
Yeah, it's
Right,
important, but not that important that we need to not eat ice cream right now.
Yeah.
Well,
great.
okay, this is great. Real food or supplements? Ice cream supplements or real food?
Yeah. I think everybody knows real food's better, right? That's got to be the cake. Your supplements are the icing on the cake. The reason why I put that in the book, though, is these kids go away to college and they're doing so much activity and more than they've ever done before. And the dining hall might not be open 24 hours. They might not have a lot of money to buy other food and DoorDash and stuff like that. So what I say is, ideally, we all get all of our nutrients and calories from real food, right? That's the thing we should aspire to. I think in a college setting, if you're really having a hard time keeping weight on because you're just moving so much, then some supplements might be a good answer. But I think try to take care of the food thing first and then figure out I need to take creatine or whey protein or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I feel like on the supplement front, a lot of, I don't like in high school sports, they get you on creatine or like they encourage you to be taking protein. What's your take on supplements in high school and heading into college more specifically?
I think as far as a big picture, take care of food first, then think about supplements, right? I think to keep it I think a multivitamin, multi-mineral, if you're not eating regular meals because of travel and mom and dad might not be around, whatever it is, that's a good place to start, right? I think if you're a power athlete type person, creatine is probably a good thing to add into your daily diet, right? If you're an endurance person, maybe not, and the jury's still kind of out on that. And I think if you're a very slender, thin body type or put muscle mass on, some kind of whey protein or the basic protein might be a good option. Beyond that, I probably wouldn't advise much for that younger population, right? And we have a thing going on now in college where like every single kid is loaded up on every energy drink they can possibly get their hands on.
They come so caffeinated. They're doing pre-workout and they're pre-workout and like their poor hearts.
and my question to these kids are, because I'm 20 years older than them, is like, if you can't get excited about playing sports at one of the best conferences in the country with all of your best friends in the prime of your life, good luck being middle-aged. Like, how are you going to function at 40 when you got a wife and kids screaming at you, your mortgage payment due, your car's breaking down, your boss hates you? How many Celsius are you going to drink to get through that phase in your life, right?
There's not enough energy drink.
Here's an interesting idea about supplements, guys. I talk in the classes I teach, I talk a lot about how we have an epidemic of low energy in the United States, right? And I can't remember if this is in the book or not. It might be in some of the supplemental material. But if you think about this, I don't know how old you guys are, but in the year 2000, Red Bull became popular, right? Red Bull kind of popped off. Red Bull became a thing. And then after that, all the other energy drinks, followed suit and got popular, right? So in 25 years, we went from pre-Red Bull, the strongest supplement you could buy was a black coffee, right? To everybody drinking espresso, coffee, Red Bull, Celsius, Monster nonstop, right? If that same idea was applied to alcohol, it would be like in 2000, the strongest alcohol was a light beer. And now in 2025, everybody's walking around with bottles of Everclear everywhere they go, just hammered. And we're like, how did that happen that fast? But it's a wild thing. It didn't exist 25 years ago, and now we have a generation of people that can't imagine existing without constant pre-workout, energy drink, all this stuff. And I'm not trying to knock him his hustle, but I don't think that's a great thing societally that we're all doing at such a young age.
Yeah, I agree,
dude. Yeah, well, and back on the real food thing, this is like a serious topic in endurance sport especially, and I'm sure it is with football and any other team sport, but I think most athletes are underfueled. And unless you're tracking your food, you really don't know what macros you're eating. You can guess. You can be like, yeah, I think I'm about this, and I'm not like John and I, we aren't like, you have to track all the time. I think that's unreasonable as well. But track for a week and then making adjustments, and then you can kind of get those visuals of what that food looks like, what's your calorie burn on certain days of the week. And so, yeah, we're with you. Food.
Yeah, I think one thing we could convey this to kids younger than we do now is that eating and sleeping and hydration and recovery is part of the deal, right? You can run like a lunatic. You can lift like a lunatic. That's output, right? That's when we put out. If we don't put it back in, we're not going to get better. It's just not going to work, right? So I do think like this generation is probably better with like definitely hydration, right? Everybody walks around with $75 water bottles everywhere they go.
Yeah, the big one.
You can laugh at that. You can laugh at that. Yeah, you can laugh at the trendiness of the water bottles, but kids drinking water is a good thing, right?
Yeah,
but I think we got to start attacking that nutrition and realize that the gym is very important. The kitchen and the dinner table as important, right?
Right. Yeah, and sleep, like you talked about. Yeah, that as well.
It's all good stuff. Okay. All right. Moving on. Mobility. First greater than flexibility.
Yeah, I think if you look at the strictly like lab definitions of flexibility, just the idea of getting a position and hold it for a while. Mobility being able to move joints through a full range of motion under possible stress and duress. I think for athletic, mobility is more of an issue, right? We want to be able to do a squat, a lunge, rotate our shoulders 360 degrees, that kind of thing is kind of more important. Now, there's some kids that are just super tight and doing like a hamstring stretch and holding it or a quad stretch and holding it is probably valuable, right? But I think once you have some baseline flexibility, let's be as mobile as we can and have our bodies function the way they're supposed to function, while they're moving.
Right.
Yeah, we encourage that a lot and see that a lot with our adult athletes that, are getting into swimming and right there, really tight in their shoulders. Okay, well, we got to open that up, maybe spend some time in a doorway to relax some things, but then ultimately functional mobility. Can you move through the different patterns, swim, bike, run, and becomes more of emphasis on that if you do have a limitation in flexibility to get there, like work it, and then mobility is the longer term play.
And two, like, I think people think when you hear mobility and stretching, you have to do it, like a lot. And it's just like people avoid it because it's like, that's another thing on top of my already 2-a-days or 3-a-days that I'm doing. But I think you only need to do it for a few minutes every day. And it makes a big difference. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think that's a lot of things in our world, right, guys? That it's the cumulative effect of what you do daily adds up, right? If you stretch for 2 minutes a day over the course of a year, that's like 700 plus minutes that you spend stretching, right? But you barely noticed it when you were doing it. And I think the human body is weird because it's almost like compound interest, right? If you eat poorly over time, you have a problem. If you eat properly over time, you have good things happen, hopefully, right? Same thing with flexibility and mobility. I think that's where I like the internet a lot. I really like social media. I love that we got to meet each other through the power of the internet. But I think that the era of like people selling like these 60-minute per day stretch programs, or you have to buy this special piece of equipment to stretch because this band is somehow different than a rope that I got at Home Depot, even though it does the exact same thing, but it's got your logo on it. Those are not great things, right? We just start with the stretches you did in high school phys ed, and then if you need more, look for more. But it's not brain surgery, right?
Yeah,
totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. All right. Well, those were those. I think we hit most of them.
Yeah.
Nice. I appreciate that.
Great debates. And we're generally aligned. So I think we were wholly aligned,
definitely,
which is awesome. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about the changes to the college athletics landscape with NIL, like the transfer portal, and just your thoughts on the impacts of that, positive, negative, and talking whichever strokes you want, broadly or narrowly, for I think the future of college athletics and the kids in it, ultimately, which is their lives, right?
Yeah. So I think, and keep in mind, I voluntarily left college athletics about a month ago to go into academia because I don't want to say I didn't like, but my role was changing drastically. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as a strength and conditioning coach in the same place for 20 years, there were student athletes I worked with for all 4 years they were on campus. We stayed in contact. and we've been friends for 10, 12 years in a row, right? So even when I put a book out, these kids are the most supportive people. I go on their podcast, they post them. It's a great thing, right?
Yeah.
And in the transfer portal era where you can leave every year, that relationship building is just over. It just does not exist anymore, right? And I don't think that's a great thing. And I think that's from a coaching perspective, right? From a student athlete perspective, we got to start having this conversation of if you can play at 4 schools in 4 years and go to a progressively better school every year, athletically, that's really great. Where does that put you academically? What degree do you have? What did you accomplish in the classroom over 4 years? And that's a question we really need to figure out, right? And again, I'm not delusional. If you're a football player, a men's basketball player, and there's progressively more money at every step, you got to do it. It's life-changing, the amount of money you can make right now. But if you're not in that conversation to make at least 6 figures at every stop, the degree might be more valuable, right? So I think we've got to put a little more emphasis on the academic side of things, or at least the life side of things beyond just what's right in front of us, right? And then the NIL, the house settlement and paying the players, I'm in the extreme minority on this. I think it's fair. I think and here's why I think it's fair. 6, 7 years ago, we had 3 men's basketball players at Seton Hall that were the face of the university for 2 straight years. We had them on every magazine, every website, every billboard on the Parkway. They were on the sides of buses, right? And I used to pull up next to city buses on my way to work, and I'd go train them later in the day, and I'd be like, guys, I pulled up next to your bus again. I got the same 2 questions I had every day this week. 1, how are you not getting paid for that? And number 2, who photoshopped those pictures? Because none of you are that handsome in real life. Right?
Nice.
But I think, but in the era we live in now, it was exploitive for a long time. We're going to make millions of dollars off of your picture and your name and your playing ability, and we're going to give you a meal plan for it. That's unfair, right? I really believe that was unfair. But now this other thing has happened is they're employees now. They're workers, for lack of a term, and the student side of student athlete has gotten pushed completely out the window. And I don't think that's a great thing. I think if we're going to promote you like that and we're going to eat off your plate, the example we play in the Prudential Center, which is a 20,000 seat arena where the New Jersey Devils play their home games. It's an NHL arena. We play our basketball games there. And every time somebody came to me, well, why should we pay these guys? We're giving XYZ. They're only kids. I'm going, all right, Justin Bieber's a kid. If he sells out the arena, he gets a check. Right? So why is it different when we do it playing basketball versus singing pop songs that people like? So I think you got to look at it fairly. But then what I will say is this: moving forward, and we can end it after this. I think the ideas that we implemented the last couple of years are good, and they're good for the players. But I think for this system to go on and continue, there has to be some changes and some amendments to allow, number one, the kids to get degrees and pursue academic progress, right? And some ways for smaller schools like Seton Hall to stay in the game and compete with much bigger schools with much bigger bank accounts. So I think it's the infancy of some good ideas that are not working right now. Is that fair to you guys?
Yeah, I would totally agree. And the focus on football, basketball, right? Like that's where the money is, and that's where a lot of the problems are. But it creates problems in the other, in the rest of the ecosystem as well. But you could see a world where, right, those two get addressed separately from the others.
What I've seen, and just real quick, any sport where the kids know professional blank is not an option, they're staying in the school to get a degree, right?
Right.
But our baseball team at Seton Hall, which has been a dynasty for decades, has been hit so hard because every kid that has a good year at Seton Hall thinks if I go to a Big Ten school next year, I'm going to get more eyes on me, get drafted higher, and they do that 2 or 3 times. And some guys have been drafted the last couple of years doing that, but a lot of them end up with a useless degree that they can't use to do anything, and they can't get a job coaching baseball because they didn't do an education major. So like, what do you do in that case? So it's not. But I think you're obviously your football, your basketball, and your baseball have been hit so hard because, kind of correctly, the more eyes you get on you, the bigger conference you play in, the more money you'll make when you get drafted. But not everybody gets drafted, so it doesn't work out for everybody.
Yeah.
What are the rules so if there is a student athlete who does switch schools every 4 years, right? And he I don't know, can he finish football and not graduate with a degree? Or does he have to?
Oh,
What's
yeah.
the rules there? Okay.
No. When you decide you're done, Yeah, so take
Like, it's
football
like
for
anything.
example, right?
Yeah.
Like the really good football players, if they're in like the Heisman conversation after your junior year, you play in a bowl game and then you're going to get ready for the combine. You probably never go back to your campus, and that's been the deal for decades, right? In the basketball world, you got to stay through the tournament usually in March. And then we've had guys, like I didn't see them again. They were just gone. They were getting ready for their combine, getting ready to talk, doing their meeting with agents and stuff like that. So once you're done playing, there's no governing body that can tell you have to get a degree, right? Yeah. While you're playing, you have to be moving, progressing towards a degree and passing classes. But after you play your last game, it's literally the Wild West. You can walk out of the locker room and never think about going back to a classroom.
Cut the check and get out of there. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You'd think, be like, no, you got to finish your degree now if you're going to get paid.
Well, I always think, too, when guys have done that in the past, I always think, why would you leave now? Like the hard work is over.
Yeah,
right? You're a local celebrity. Everybody knows and likes you. This is going to be such a fun couple months. Why would you not just go ahead and finish the degree? But some of them don't do it.
All right. Yep. Yep. Well, interesting. Okay.
All right. Should we hit you with our rapid fire?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What's the most underrated skill someone going into college should have?
Planning and time management. And that's my 1A is being personable and being a nice person and making connections on campus and making it a good time in your life.
Nice. What is your favorite athletes to work with?
I'll be honest, man. I really like swimmers. Like I said earlier, they're a great group to work with. I like the cross-country kids every year because we're speaking the same language, right? I'm running on the same trails they're running. We like to have good conversations. And then baseball and softball are usually a lot of fun. They like to lift. They're competitive, and they're fun to be around.
Good banter.
Yeah.
What's a book you recommend that's not one that you've written?
Throwing you under the bus.
Training or just everything?
Yeah, it could be anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
All right, that's a tough one. I'm in a library right now, and for some reason you caught me like a deer in headlights. I'll tell you the last book I read. I literally just finished and returned to this library before we got online. Kid Cudi's autobiography, the musical artist. He's been around for a long time. I listen to a lot of his stuff when I'm training, so I like it. Was not a great autobiography, but it was a good autobiography of I think a pretty important musical artist the last 10, 15 years.
Interesting. Okay. What's your favorite genre of music? This wasn't written. I'm just asking. Is it rap?
It's hip hop, man. I love
hip hop.
From the old stuff to the new stuff. Yeah, I'm just a big hip hop head.
Well, I can't wait for you to listen to Big Iron by Marty Roberts. Not hip hop at all.
And if people want to follow you, find your book, how can they get to you? How can they keep up with what you're working on, etc.?
So on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Amazon.com, it's Angelo Gingerelli, just my full name. And then on Instagram, it's Mr. Fifth Round, MR, the number 5, THRUND. And then my email is angelo.gingerelli@gmail.com. Just reach out whenever you want, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Sweet.
Love it.
Love it, man. That was awesome. Thanks.
That was a lot of fun. I'll be honest, man. After that intro song, I was like, these guys we've set the bar too high to kick us off. It's going to go down from here. But you guys kept it rolling the whole hour. That was great.
Hey.
Love it.
We're
appreciate it. It was all you, man. It was all, you've done 49 of these, so I think you're ahead of the game. But we're going to close it out the only way we know how.
Through the doors of Selton Hall rode a man both sharp and steady, with a clipboard around a kettlebell. You knew that he was ready. He wrote a book on how to train, and athletes all stood tall, working in the weight room at good old Seton Hall. Good old Seton Hall. He had coached the fastest runners, built their legs like timbered steel, made the soccer team explosive and the swimmers hard to kill. with 4 years to make it happen, a big goal to chase. If you're training with Gingerelli, you're training with the best. Training with the best.
And that's our show. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you later.